Lakeview during the early 80s was the site of a few other social experiments, like the ill-fated attempt to change the school's colors to pink and black and adopt a new mascot, the Stowe High Good and Plenties. There were plenty of valid signatures on that petition, but unfortunately, decades of maroon and gold tradition did not play in our favor. Another science project could be described as one milk carton, one unused locker. After several months, the consensus among us scientists was that milk cartons were incredibly resilient, but things could only continue in one unfortunate direction. An unwashed gym shirt we named Fred Bread was also left in an unused locker for several months, but that experiment ended during a surprise locker inspection, which yielded a few illegal substances, some Playboy magazines, and a green, fuzz-covered gym shirt. Fred Bread taught us a lot about living, about dying, and what it was to be a man. Actually, he taught us the value of a roll of quarters and a cup of laundry detergent. The building itself was almost a military-industrial complex in scope, with metal and wood shops, a massive gymnasium and locker rooms, band and choir rooms, business school rooms for IOE students, a dark room for yearbook and newspaper photographers, not to mention offices for teachers and classrooms for everything from Latin to physics. The only catch was that students had 5 minutes at best to travel between all of those areas. Logistics rarely entered the equation whenever we were selecting our classes for the next semester. Anyone who signed up for Algebra 2 and choir, for example, would have to run from the last room of the top floor on the north side of the building to one of the last rooms on the bottom floor of the south side. The first bell served two purposes: the end of the class period and the start of the daily 300-yard dash to the gym's locker room. One class at Lakeview became very popular because of Ohio state law. A would-be driver under the age of 18 was required by law to present a certificate of completion from a recognized driver's ed school. Those who could afford the tuition fees had the option of attending what we like to call a crash course on driving. Sears offered a 4-day driver's ed course that satisfied at least the spirit of the law. Successful students would indeed receive a certificate of completion and could take their driving test in Cuyahoga Falls. However, there were many of us who enjoyed turning that kind of privileged positive into a Stowe-billy negative. If a driver in the Stowe area ever did something hazardous, like stopping short or failing to signal a turn, many of us would yell, "Where did you learn to drive? Sears?" Meanwhile, the rest of us who were of driving age would sign up for the school-sponsored driver's ed course at Lakeview. This meant 18 weeks of classroom, simulator, and real-world training, but at least we wouldn't drive like those heathens with the Cracker Jack box certificates. The driver's ed instructor had exactly the demeanor you would expect from a social studies teacher, shanghaied into teaching 16 years how to handle a 3,000-pound death mobile. He was fond of pointing out that he was a fervent bicyclist, so he was essentially giving us the means and ability to run him off the road later. We would watch the required blood runs red on the highway snuff films, spend time behind the wheel of a 1963 Studebaker in a driving simulator, then drive around town in a real car. The instructor did have a second brake installed on his side, however. At the end of the course, he doled out the certificates of completion, which he called death certificates, and warned us all not to say anything approaching a thank you. I'll end with one final memory of a teacher from Lakeview, a man who fought in Korea and enjoyed repeating his one good story about the place. It seems he was a hit with the local ladies because of his thick red hair, and they gave him a Korean nickname which he translated as "Number One Redhead." He taught history at Lakeview, although he was the kind of person I always thought should be making history somewhere else. I really enjoyed his class, and sometimes I would visit him during my 8th period study hall. He also owned a miniature golf course, so occasionally he would hand me a set of free passes to play a game or two. One day I walked into his empty classroom and found him watching TV. It wasn't a standard over-the-air channel, but an uncut cable movie channel. The cable television line ran on a pole right outside his classroom window, so he managed to splice some coaxial cable and tap into the signal. We watched Superman 2 for an entire class period, then I left to catch my bus. That's one of my lasting memories from my time spent at Lakeview High School. The building with no lake and no view, but still plenty of heart and soul.